Well, hello, Ilayda. It's so nice to see you today on this
Likewise.
beautiful Sunday evening. Thank you for your time. I'm so excited to hear about your experiences. I'd love to get started by hearing about your journey and how you got to where you are as a TV exec at Macro.
I will try to keep it as short as possible, but I did a summer of brutal unpaid internships the summer before senior year, and through one of those internships I worked for the showrunner of Narcos, Eric Newman. He was great to me, and I did a lot in that internship for him and like got more responsibility. And then when we were on our class trip to LA, I happened to be in the right room at the right time when I was catching up with him, and he needed a writer's PA, and I didn't even need to send my resume. It was just like that sort of kismet, and keeping in touch, of course. So I started out, my first job in LA was 7 years ago now at this point,
Mhm.
being the writer's PA for Narcos, Mexico, the first season that it like not Pablo's seasons. And that was just lunch and coffee, but there I really got obsessed with representation. Like I'm gonna talk about this at another point, I'm sure too, but I'm Middle Eastern, and I was like really excited to see this huge show for a Latino audience. And confidentially, it was all written by white people. Like there were maybe a couple Latinos in there, but they didn't really have a voice, and they would write the scripts
Mm,
in English and translate them. And I got really obsessed with like authenticity, but also fell in love with TV,
mm,
more than I thought. I really always thought I was a film girly, but really saw how TV worked. I wanted to be a producer, not a writer, so I decided to start a job at WME in the mailroom, and I got that by just like emailing obsessively the one alumni that had gone there and met there, and he got me an interview. Thank you, DC Wade. You're the manager now. Um, and then from the mailroom, you float around, you do mail, and then I went to his desk, and he just did talent. DC, actually, I just
mm,
ended up serendipitously working for him. He was one of the only Black agents in the building, and he was really creatively interested, obviously, in empowering people of color. So, like, we really aligned on that. And I learned about macro then, and that was like 5 years ago, no, more than 6 years ago at this point.
mhm.
And I told everyone I wanted to work for them. I just made it really known. And so from there, I moved on to Jill Gillette's desk, who is the head of literary packaging. And she just basically sells book adaptations for TV and film. And she's mainly a TV woman. So, like, she found the creator of Mad Men and True Detective, and like they were authors from the middle of nowhere, and she
Mhm.
really built them up. But again, her list was like 97% white. And I
Mm,
dug into it, and I realized that like publishing is also white and has its own systemic issues of racism. So I got really obsessed with that and started trying to find authors of color for them to sign, and just like sending books to clients of color that maybe WME was not paying the most attention to. And when an opportunity at Macro came up, like because I had been doing that, I got one of the first interviews, which was really exciting. And I was debating between film and TV. I had interviews for both, and I
mhm.
ended up just like clicking with the head of TV at the time, Marta Fernandez, a lot more, as well as like I was really evaluating myself, and what I really watch is TV more, and TV has become just as good as film now, like in terms of quality. At least like my taste is HBO level kind
Mhm.
of prestige eventized thing. So, um, yeah, I started as a TV coordinator there and was really empowered because we were building something new. So we got to build the slate from the ground up because Macro had never had a TV department before. So, um, and after a year, I was promoted to manager, which basically is just like a junior executive. So I had my own projects, but mostly I was responsible for catching overflow from other executives. And then I just kept growing there. So I was manager for 2 years, and then I got promoted, and then I got promoted to director about a year and a half ago now. Um, and now I'm not responsible for catching overflow. I'm just responsible for my own slate. And yeah, I really love it. It's a great environment to work in. It's super fulfilling, and I have a lot of autonomy and feel like my voice is heard. And yeah.
I love your story so much. And it sounds like there was a lot of serendipitous moments, but also paired with a lot of hard work, right? Like being in the right room, like you said, with the right people, and a lot of cold call and cold emailing,
Yeah, that took a
and putting
lot
in.
of, like from going from a college student who's like horrible at responding to emails in general to like putting yourself out there and like being annoying. It's like I had a professor tell me like you're in the same boat if you don't email them
Hmm.
obsessively than if you just never did, or like you might as
Hmm.
well just like knock on every door and really try, and that's how you end up in the same room, So anyway.
Yeah. How did you get that first internship?
Another student had it and they were looking for more and they posted on like a UNCSA site.
Mm,
But I was already working a different internship, but it was only a couple days a week and I hated it. They were terrible people. I was so exploited and I just wanted something else that was like better. So I would do two
hmm.
days at this horrible one and 3 days at this great one. So yeah.
And that was out in LA.
Yeah. Oh, the first one I found actually was by, which now I'm like is stupid. I went through every single production company I saw listed on Variety and I found who worked there and I emailed them my resume and one of them called me back and that was the terrible one.
Wow. Do you have any advice for people who are trying to break in? Of course, from your experience, it seems like the advice would be cold call, cold email everybody who might be willing to take a chance on you. Do you have any advice beyond that?
Yeah, I think it depends on your level. So if you're just starting out and you're just breaking in, like email everyone you've ever made eye contact with that is in the entertainment industry. Like that's someone told me that and like I did it and that's what happened. It was not like
Mm,
I reached out to two people and one of them called me back. I reached out to hundreds of people and I'm sure hundreds of people rolled their eyes at my emails or my Facebook messages, but like the people that don't like will help you and they want to help
hmm.
because chances are they've gone through a similar thing. So if you get that yes, like you're already halfway there. And um, yeah, meeting in person is always really great. Like just making sure they like you is like half of the, is like really key to them helping you. And being your authentic self in person and also like new ideas of how to help you will come up. I would also say don't ask for things. Like I would just say meet and say what you want to do and let them think of how to help you.
Hmm.
Because it's always a poor taste in someone's mouth to be like, can you get me this job? Or can you submit the script to your company? Like, no, I will tell you how I can help. And I get that now being on the other side of it. So, yeah.
I totally agree. I think what I did, I don't remember if this was advice that I received or just something I figured out. I completely agree. Don't ask for a job and ask about them. People love talking about themselves. So when you show interest in their lives and their careers and their journeys, I find that they naturally want to help you. Would you agree?
No, absolutely. Sometimes I would have a coffee with an agent where I was like, they don't even need me for this conversation and they're already helping me. So just by talking about themselves. And that's another thing, like if they are someone with like a business, like compliment it. Like for
Hmm.
I was at the agency, I would really study someone's client list and find who was really just creatively interesting to me and I would compliment them on, this client is really cool. It's really cool that you work with them and here's what I like about them. People love to hear that their taste is great and that they're right about something and that you're excited about the same thing that they're excited about. So, yeah, absolutely agree.
You mentioned being authentic is really important, and I completely agree. I've been going to a lot of SAG and SAG after Foundation events, Q&As with actors and directors and creative teams of different projects, and so many of them, and casting, so many of them speak about being authentic. And for some people, it can be really easy, I think. Do you have any advice for people who maybe are still trying to find themselves and maybe get the advice, you have to be authentic to yourself, but then the natural response is, okay, yes, but how?
Yeah, valid question. Especially when you've like, freshly graduated of school and you're just entering this new world. You can be authentic to the fact that you're still figuring that out. Like,
Mm,
just you must know something about yourself and lean into that. Like I didn't know if I wanted to do TV or film, if I wanted to do development or well, I did want to do no, I wanted to do development, but at a certain point I didn't. Um I didn't know if I wanted to work in an agency. Like these are things that you can vocalize and it's okay to be figuring it out because people will help you figure that out by just hearing that and talking about it. And I think also authenticity really just means to me like your people are going to be your people and people that are not your people won't. So like if
hmm
you're showing up with this like you should always show up with your real self because if you're trying to impress someone and tailor like a conversation and be really fake, they're going to pick up on that one and two why? Because if this person doesn't really know you, why would they help you? Why would you want their help? If you don't vibe, just move on and find someone else. There will always be people that you connect with and it's never like it's never good to go into something being really fake and then wonder why you didn't make any authentic connections. So I used to get really in my head about networking and be like, what do they want to hear? And it's just like,
Mm,
talk about what you want to do. I always go to talk about what you're passionate about. Like that's if you can't get through a conversation with someone about that, then it's kind of like either a vibe issue or it's their issue and it doesn't have to do with you. And you can move on and find someone else that you do vibe with and will help you.
yeah, I completely agree. I think once you get to the point of what you're passionate about, um, conversation can naturally flow, especially if you're talking to someone who's just as passionate. I think my favorite quality of my friends, the thing that I admire most in people is their passion. Um, and speaking of passion, I think your passion for on-screen representation is so important. Um, I'd love to ask you more about that and how has I guess first, how has your experience been as a Turkish American in the industry? Yes.
Yeah. Um, it's been good. It has its ups and downs. I'm from a minority that is just like super underrepresented in Hollywood, and we are not as like empowered as a community in Hollywood to move things forward the way that other communities have really pulled it together. Like
Mhm.
it's so beautiful when I see the Black community come together and create something like Macro, and it just trickles down and we all help each other and then we become the new majority. So I think like going from WB to Macro was a huge difference. And a lot of that is because I work with mostly all people of color. Like the minority in my office
Mm.
is white people, and no offense, but it's amazing. Like
I
no,
love to hear it.
yeah, no one's uncomfortable. But there are of course moments where you do have to educate people, and
Mhm.
I just know at Macro it comes from a place of they just don't know what they don't know, and it's never offensive ever. But a lot of people just don't understand that like Middle Eastern doesn't necessarily mean Muslim, doesn't necessarily mean
Mm.
Arab. Like there's a lot of that educating and it just speaks to why I'm passionate about that on screen, like showing that. And also there are very I can't really think of much past like Miss Marvel where we're represent no, not even. That's not even a Middle Eastern person, but um that's at least Muslim, but I can't really think of any show or film that represents Middle Eastern people as anything but like terrorists. Or I guess there's Mo and Rami, they're doing really well, but at the same time, like parents that don't understand is like the narrative in a lot of Middle Eastern
Mm-hmm.
stories. And my family's really close. That's not any of my friends' experiences. So yeah, and I think like growing up in North Carolina, in like at like a mostly white school, it was really tough. I'm very white passing, and I was still kind of labeled as this like exotic, girl from a terrorist family. And I wish that there was more on screen to educate people, because
Mm-hmm.
I think that's the only way to actually get someone to see those things, is kind of trick them into it by being entertained. And I've always wanted to do some form of like activism through filmmaking. Like I love those films and TV shows where after you're like, I can't believe this is going on. And you didn't click on that because you wanted a PSA about global warming. Like it just kind of snuck it in there, and now you care about it, now you know. And I just realized the more experiences I had, that I wanted that for Middle Eastern people too, and Turkish people. And yeah, I'm just not seeing a lot of it. So I'm like, if it's not me, then who? And I'm really lucky that my parents have always empowered me to do this career, because it's also culturally like very difficult to be like, I
Mm-hmm.
want to do this thing where I don't have a clear job path, and maybe I'll have a job tomorrow, maybe I won't, and maybe I'll make a lot of money, or maybe I'll be starving, and there's no pension or that sort of thing.
Yeah.
So um, it takes a lot of support for sure, but um, it hasn't been like, yeah, the experience is more just like you're educating. There's definitely some rough moments. Like I worked for a boss for a year, and she could not get my ethnicity right. And it's just not that hard to remember. Like she would just be so far off. Like one time she thought I was Moroccan. One time after I had left, she thought I was Indian. Like
Wow.
I worked for her every single day for a year. So there are those people for sure, but then there are those people like macro, and like I'm so thankful that I found my colleagues there, because I'm just so empowered to like keep it up and keep going. And even if it feels kind of lonely sometimes.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah.
I love to hear that you have received so much support from your family because I think a lot of people of color maybe don't receive that same support in pursuing a non-stable or creative career. Do you have any advice or some things you would say to people who maybe don't have haven't been as fortunate and have to maybe carve out their own way and prove themselves to their parents or family?
Yeah, look, it's tricky and it's easier for me to say because my family has been really supportive, but I definitely have friends that feel like they have to explain their whole identities to their parents every time
Hmm.
they suffer a loss in their journey. Um, and it hurts, but like fill that gap with people that do get you. And I strongly believe like a lot of my friends, I consider them family, and just like follow that energy, and your parents will get it. And unfortunately, that's a lot of entertainment too, is like people don't think you're a big deal until they see it. And then they're like, oh,
Yeah.
I should have been nice to her. And that's like a very simplified version. But yeah, and also just accepting that our parents were just in a different time, and we're all evolving, and one day we might be those parents in a different
Hmm.
aspect. We might be better in some ways, but we might also just not understand something about our kid, and just like giving them grace is really helpful. And also, I mean, contextualizing is really important. Like sometimes they don't understand that a win is a win if there's like money not attached to it or something.
Right.
No, this is a big deal. Like this award only goes to these people. And like when you put it in that context, it also helps, which I'm sure people have thought of. But yeah, that's really tough. And just fill the space with more love. Like you should not just
Yeah.
ever be alone in this. Like it'll be really disheartening to do that, I think.
I think it's so wonderful to have people like you in the industry advocating for everyone, people of color, especially women. And because so many of us might feel lonely in this journey, especially if we don't have the backing of our family. And I've definitely received a comment or two being like, "Oh, like, why don't you become a teacher or a nurse?" And I'm like, "That's no, not happening."
Not well paid.
Um, right. So it's so I think what you're doing is so admirable. And I love to hear how macro has really empowered you to advocate for diversity. And it seems like in your own way.
Yeah, well, I feel like Charles and senior leadership, they do a really good job of hiring people that are mission aligned and
Mm,
have their own set of goals in the kind of content they want to make, as well as like for the company. So in that, like we all kind of have a shorthand, like we're all there for the same reason. Like there, it's definitely nuanced, and
mhm,
we want to get push our own communities forward. Like I'm also queer, and I want to push those stories forward. I never see queer Middle Eastern people on screen. So um, yeah, it's a lot of like culture setting as well. I sound like I'm drinking the Kool-Aid, but Charles is really wonderful at making sure everyone's voice is heard. And, some of our greatest successes have come from interns that worked with him the first internship cycle and pointed to this book. And then he's got Ava DuVernay on it or whatever. And like, that's why he just like, he values the next generation and he
mm,
realizes like a great idea can come from anywhere. And hierarchy is not as important as as it is right now in Hollywood. Like,
mhm,
of course, there's a structure that we have to follow and all of that. Like, it is a system, but he also used to work at William Morris, the agency that I worked at, and the culture there is just much different. It's just like if you're
mhm,
an assistant, you're like agents are like not speaking to you most of the time,
mm,
looking you in the eye, and who know, like those assistants are all going to grow and become agents or producers or whatever. So who are you to
mhm,
say and like treat someone so small when you really have no idea? And like
right.
there are so many assistants that go on from the agency and become producers where now those agents need them. So
Mhm,
I think macro is just really good at like equalizing and providing a safe space, and like we all just kind of get it, and it
mhm,
feels that's also why I was talking about like this majority of coming together, because these are really hard battles in white dominated spaces to fight, and you're not gonna fight them alone. Like if you show up with a whole team that's backing you up of people of color, like what are they gonna say? Like it's much easier to win with a team. So I feel like that's a lot of it. And then just the way I got lucky with how they're structured, they're very quality over quantity in terms of
mm,
their hiring. So while a director or a manager somewhere else at a bigger place is probably just keeping things moving along, taking meetings with people that they might suggest to other executives more senior to use in projects. Like we were since I've been a manager, I was given like my own slate to point with of course different colleagues, but like there were projects that were just mine. And if you were passionate about something, you would always be heard. And sometimes we would be just fighting to the death to get to buy something, and our boss would be like, "Fine, you care that much, let's just buy it." And so it was empowering in that sense, where they really did value passion and trusted the people they hired, which is pretty rare in Hollywood, oddly. So
I love to hear it. Honestly, it's so refreshing because you're absolutely right. The majority of Hollywood isn't what I'm hearing now, you know? Most people aren't heard, and it's a lot of battling these structures and hierarchies like you were mentioning. What do you think we can do, in settings that aren't maybe as supportive as at macro? What can everyone else do to support the same cause and passion for on-screen representation.
Um, yeah, I definitely have friends, a lot of friends that are the only one, at a company, and it's really tough. You often become like the racist police where you're just like, let me read this script and tell you if it's okay, because of course I'm a monolithic authority on all people of color. Like, no. Um, but at the same time, like use your differences as an asset. Like, you're the only one. Like, you
Hmm.
can carve out room for yourself, especially if you're an exec, but even as an assistant, like think of this as like you know something that they don't know and you can use that to your advantage. And if I was the only Middle Eastern person in the whole company of white people, I would be, sorry, that's my dog. um, I would be vocalizing like, hey, you should check out this show that stars a Middle Eastern person, or hey, check out this script that like fits your mandates for other reasons. Another thing is just like making them realize it's not just about this is important. Like it makes business sense as well. Like there's a huge audience that's being underserviced.
Hmm.
Um, so I think that's part of it too. And then in terms of just support, like find your people. They're also like great allies, I think. And we make a lot of assumptions sometimes that people won't understand and they might not understand. But
Hmm.
I think you can always like teach people how to be a good ally and support you. And if you're speaking up and getting interrupted, like there's got to be someone that's noticing that. So just those little things I think can go a long way. Just like find your people and don't dim your light because you're uncomfortable because there's actually a really great book that talks about this called it's a fiction book, but it's called Black Buck by Matteo Ascaripour, and it was his first novel. He wrote it based on his experience working at a startup as the only Black man there. And it was a wild experience. It was very like Wolf of Wall Street meets Sorry to Bother You kind of book, but it kind of doubles as like a sales manual for people of color in white dominated workspaces and how to
Mm.
use where you come from and what you bring to the table as an asset and how you can actually like lap people, and go past them with that. So highly recommend for more specific advice.
Thank you. I'm definitely gonna check it out. I 2 weeks ago I spoke with Aiden and he also gave me a book recommendation. So I'm loving all these book recs. I think it's
I love
great.
books. I mean, clearly, so there might be like three more, but there's such.
Yes. What's one or a couple of your proudest moments in your career where you feel like, I mean, I guess period, and or where you feel like you maybe made a difference?
Um, it's not what I thought it was gonna be actually. Like, I think I've had there's one big win recently that I can't talk about yet, but I was proud of myself, but by the time I got it, I had worked so hard that I was so exhausted that I didn't even enjoy the win. But it was basically attaching this like A-list actress who has not been on TV in decades to like come back and star in this show. It
Mm,
was really hard to do it. It took like 13 months through two strikes to try to figure it out and do it. And
wow.
but I didn't know if it was gonna happen. And when it finally did, I was just like relieved and moved on. And it was weird to like for that to be, I thought that would be when I'm
Hmm.
proudest, but really my proudest moments have been with like my interns, honestly. Like that's been so fulfilling and fun. Like that's where I feel like I'm actually making a difference. I love to like bring interns into meetings with me because no one ever trusts them. And I'm like, they're so polite. Like they're college students and they know, like I remember what it felt like to be like, I don't want to say the wrong thing and I'm being really careful. It's almost safer to bring them in than an executive sometimes. And if it's a
Sure.
meeting that's like the other person doesn't mind,
Hmm.
why not let them sit in on a pitch? Why not let them meet this writer with you? And they can learn so much just by observing, but a lot of gatekeeping in Hollywood is because
Mm,
of that. They're just left out of the room and they don't ever learn
yeah.
this. And then, oh no, you don't have experience or you don't know how to talk to talent. So, um, those have been like my proudest moments where I let an intern join a pitch with me and we talk about it after and they're so excited and they just like thank me profusely for enriching their experience. Like that could have been someone that quit because they had an awkward internship, but I just set them on a path where they actually got more excited about something. So I think that's probably like more of my proud moments. So yeah.
I love that so much. You're really giving back and also making a difference in the future of the industry, one person at a time. And I think that's so important because, like you said, so many people who are just trying to learn get discouraged because of the gatekeeping and maybe the coldness that they receive from people who they might find intimidating.
Yeah. Hollywood's like a weird language to speak and it's really hard,
Hmm.
especially at first. So people of color are the first people to get kept out like systemically.
Hmm.
So
Yeah.
yeah.
I get the sense that we're both pretty strong-willed women. Um, and in some ways, I feel like you have to be able to take endless amounts of rejection in order to succeed in this industry. How did we do it? How does one become so? I mean, I guess for me, I just felt like you just had to do it and not almost like put blinders on and not like, look at every single rejection and be like, about it. You just have to like keep going forward. What was
Mhm.
your experience in dealing with those rejections and also just harder realities of Hollywood?
Yeah, great question. And I'm sure as an actor, I can't even imagine how you do it because it's so vulnerable to be rejected in that role. And of course you think it's you because you're like, I'm presenting myself on screen to you and you're saying no. So, I can only imagine, but I still have a lot of feelings about it. I still feel, tough rejection, but I think part of what helps is like what's for you will be for you and what's not for
Hmm.
you will not be for you. And sometimes it's just about a good fit and a partnership. Like, for example, producers get really paranoid about, oh, what if I just passed on the next Harry Potter? Well, if you don't like that book, you're not connected to it, you're not passionate about it. Why would it ever get made? Why would it ever become Harry Potter? You should just like trust yourself. And that's also what I think about on the other side of that. If I'm that author writing that book and sending it out and that producer saying no to me, I'm of course going to think it's my writing, but maybe they just don't get me and they wouldn't be the best partner for it. Yeah, and I'm going to just do it away from them and find, the people that will support me because they're out there. It takes a lot of believing in yourself. And
Hmm.
someone also early on told me like I was dealing with a lot of frustration where I just felt like especially at WME when I was trying to get more movement for clients of color, I'd be like, this agent won't even respond to me. And like, I did all this work and I'm just so frustrated. And he just kind of stopped me really bluntly and was like, this is not a good business for you if you get frustrated easily. It is the most frustrating business on earth. Like, sometimes you just feel like you're throwing shit at the wall and seeing what sticks and you cannot take it personally. And it's just the nature of it. And once I accepted
Yeah.
that and tried to take it less personally, it's a lesson I'm learning every day, to be
Hmm.
honest. That helps a lot. Just like realizing it's the business, it's not you.
Yeah. Do you have anything that you do in your daily practice that helps you? Because for me, and actually, the more people in the industry I talk to, the more I realize everyone has something that really helps them keep grounded. Because, like you said, it's absolutely insane sometimes. If you don't have something to like ground yourself, you're gonna just explode, I think. But um, I meditate every day. And I have like I don't even know, like a 3 4 month streak now, which I'm very proud of. And I'm trying to incorporate exercise and I do tea ceremony. That's a huge part of my practice, which keeps me grounded. And I think it's also nice to have a hobby outside of that has nothing to do with my work. So I was just wondering if there's anything you do that helps you stay grounded through all of the chaos.
Totally. it's a lot of what you said. It's like finding things outside of that work to fulfill you. Because if you're just doing one thing and something goes wrong within it, and it's your whole world, then your whole world's gonna have a cloud over it. So when I was working for a really terrible boss, my temptation for the first few months, I would just like lay in bed all weekend and do nothing because I was so tired and discouraged from the experience. And I would just, it, work became my whole world. So when something went wrong, I was 10 times more emotional about it.
Mm,
And once I realized, like, hey, maybe I should go hang out with friends, or maybe I should go explore LA. Like, we live in a really cool city. There's a lot of free things to do. So I love hanging out with friends. It's like my favorite thing. If that was a hobby, that would be my favorite hobby.
yes,
But
it is a hobby. Absolutely.
I also paddleboard, which is really nice. Like doing something
Mm,
that forces you to not think about your job is really good because you have to think about balance.
totally.
Um, and getting a pet has really helped. My dog is carrying my mental health on her back.
I feel you. I love my dog. She is everything to me.
That helps with rejection too. It's like this animal loves you, no matter
Yeah.
what. And also why I think just surrounding yourself with friends helps with
Mhm.
rejection because it's like these are people choosing to be with you every day. Like it's just reminding you in front of you that you have something to bring to the table to and like experiences that are valuable. So
Yeah. I don't know about you, but I found that when I started to take care of myself more by like prioritizing these practices and seeing my community as a priority rather than my job as a priority, I found that I was more successful actually in my job. I guess perhaps it was the detachment or realizing that there's so much more to life than just work, which is so hard, I think, in this industry, right? I think it feels like when you're in Hollywood, you have to make that your number one priority just because it's so difficult. But in hindsight and actuality, I think it's quite the opposite. Like having a little bit of distance from that and not being so neurotic about your job helped me at least.
totally. I think we forget why we're living life sometimes and it's like for enjoyment. And I was that way when I first got out here. I was like, I don't need a family. I just want to sleep with my Oscars every night. And now I'm like, I want to go home at 5 and hang out with a family. Like,
Yeah.
so definitely a character arc we all have to go through.
Yes, I think I was the same way. Do you have going back to your experiences, do you have a favorite project that you worked on so far?
Um, I think my favorite one, I guess one I was a little bit more active on, the other one I was not as active, but it was still fun. When I was at the agency, I got to work on like the early stages of Made for Love, that TV show on HBO Max, and I love that author. She's a showrunner now because of that show, and she's just like one of the
Wow.
most creative voices, and she's so nice. Like incredible. And then it was kind of a full circle moment because my best friend ended up being in the post-production team for that. So I got to see like the beginning when it was just a book, and then my friend closed it up at the end. So that one was really fun. And then my favorite at Macro, that's out on air is Gentefied. That
Mhm.
was the first show I did as an exec, and it was so fun, but it was really hard. But it was amazing. Like, no offense, Netflix, but they give us like $5 to make that. Like, they somehow gave us less money in the second season. And when you do that, it's really difficult and kind of like dehumanizing. And you have to have a script coordinator who's also a staff writer who's also a PA, and it just like doesn't feel very fair.
Mhm.
And it was also during the pandemic, so like not a lot of people could go to set. We couldn't give as many roles or as many opportunities to directors because we just had to minimize who was on set. And America Ferreira directed on that and produced it. And I always expected someone of that caliber to have some sort of diva energy, some sort of weirdness, and she was like the loveliest person, even under the hardest circumstances. Like I would just be watching dailies and she's like masked up. She's got 2 minutes to do this shot and she's like running around, but as she's doing it, she's like, please, thank you, being so nice. And I can tell she's so stressed, but she's like doing it successfully
Hmm.
and making an incredible project that like really um made a lot of people feel represented and seen. So we still get a lot of love for that series. So I think I'm really proud of that one and that we were able to just like one, get it made, and two, make something that was genuinely like funny and made me cry and like all of the things. And show a family that was like really authentic to, that story. So
Yeah. Well, I'm really excited to check it out after this.
yeah, it's good. It's Gentefied with a G, by the way, because it's like, pronounced that
Oh, okay.
way.
Oh, thank you for letting
And-
me know though, so I could find it.
yeah.
Your experience with America Ferreira sounds absolutely amazing. Do you work also? I mean, I guess she was producing, right? But do you also have experiences with actors in general, whether you're working with them as actors or producers or directors? What has your experience been like?
Yeah, so at Macro, we will often like develop something for an actress. So, for example, I'm working with Kelly Marie Tran right now on this
Mm.
limited series that's based on a book. Um, it's not been announced yet, but I think it's fine. Um, and it's called Build Your House Around My Body, and it's a beautiful book, and I get to work with a lot of actresses in this capacity. I say actresses because I just generally prefer women, so it's all actors. We do it for all actors. But empowering them to be producers, that's like my favorite
Mm,
thing. They can choose which role they play. Like in this one, she's gonna play something that's like so out of the box for her, and it's gonna be so wild. And I'm excited to like be a part of that journey because I think a lot of actors, yeah, I mean, you probably feel this way too sometimes, feel really like stifled creatively because they just kind of show up to set and say someone else's lines. And especially in TV, the showrunner is like, do not change a word. And there's not really a lot
mm.
of room to have your voice heard, or if there is, it really depends on the showrunner or the person. So empowering them to also produce and be involved early on is really fun. And then of course we have people on set, but like it we tend to have more interactions, like more like quality interactions when we're not on set and more in development with actors. And we tend to also sell something easier if we get a high profile actor, of course, and they're like involved. Like we have a show called Government Cheese shooting right now with David Oyelowo starring, and he's been with the project longer than we have. Like he brought it to us. So um yeah, those are the kinds of like interactions we have, which is really, really fun.
I think someone in my acting class had an audition for Government Cheese.
Oh my God, that's awesome. Oh yeah, we're shooting now.
That's so fun. Would you say most of your interactions then are with more higher level, is that the right word? Actors?
I would say so. Like,
Mm-hmm.
we still meet with a lot of up and comers because you just never
Mm-hmm.
know who's gonna pop, and like we love to, especially as like more junior executives, like meet people early. So it's not always like this is a household name. It just
Mm-hmm.
typically that's who we would attach a like who we would attach to a project, because otherwise it just makes more sense to set it up and find those people.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but a lot of times it's hard. Like there are projects where the list of stars or household names for that role is like 0 or 3 because we're making content that doesn't exist yet, and a lot of
Mm-hmm.
those opportunities haven't been found. So a lot of them is like a lot of the projects are discoveries. Um, like there's a series I'm working on that's like a mostly Filipina cast, and the list of those stars is very slim. Like what white people consider stars is like,
Right.
yeah. I think they're all stars, but
Mm-hmm.
that word is like does a white person know who they are? Or does like right now the higher bar is even like, does like Betty in Iowa know who this person is? If not, a normie, if they don't know,
Yeah.
don't attach them. So yeah.
Do you watch auditions as part of your job?
Yeah. It depends on like so yes, we always watch them, but it kind of
Hmm.
depends on the creators and like the politics if we actually get a real say in who is actually cast. Like we'll
Hmm.
always give our opinion, but for TV, it's really the showrunners and director. Well, really the showrunner's vision. So it's really the showrunner and director that's making the ultimate call. But there have been things with government cheese where I'm like, you need to cast this person, and they cast the person that I actually thought was the weakest. Like it's just all over the
Mm.
place. We get meaningful consultation, but we can't really like force the hand. And I love watching them. I think it's like really fun. So.
I'd love to hear about that experience that you mentioned, where you had an opinion that one of the actors was maybe stronger than the other, but they went with the uh weaker weaker audition. How did that, or like why do you think that happened? Or that they chose the other actor?
It's, I think in that case, it was a very personal story to the writer director, and he had this certain vision. Like it was kind of loosely based on people he knew and himself, and we were basically casting like a younger version of him, and
Mm.
this kid was just giving him mannerisms and certain qualities that he was like, this is the character, and he has these like qualities about him that make him that character versus like his audition was strong or not. So it's almost like that's what I mean also with the rejection. Like it might not even be your fault. Like it's really not
Yeah.
about strong or weak. Um, and also I think it's so subjective sometimes. Like we'll always argue sometimes, even as colleagues, like if someone's a good actor or not. Like how do you it's just about taste, just as like what's good or
Yeah.
not. Like of course to a certain degree you can judge, but like at the end of the day, it's like what is entertaining you and what is like making you believe them? What are you connecting with? Um, so yeah, and that can also it's like there are times in a show because there are so many cooks in a kitchen to be like, this is the hill I'm dying on. And often by the casting process, you're like, you can have who you want. It's your mission, whatever. Like, I want to fight for something stronger, but we'll definitely speak up
Hmm.
if it's like that was also like a supporting character.
Mm.
So yeah.
Yeah, I read the study. I have to go back and find it, but apparently talent is only 7% or less than 7% of the determining factor of getting a role. So everything else is something else, like type or, physical looks or something like that. Only like 7% or less is talent. So
I think
yeah, it really speaks to what you were saying, that it's just taste, being right for the role. And a couple days ago, I went to a SAG-AFTRA Foundation event. It was a Q&A with Mariska Hargitay, who's on SVU, and
that's awesome. I love her.
she was great. If they post the interview online, definitely recommend. She talked about her audition experience for ER, and she saw everyone else in the audition room back when it was in person, and everyone else was like blonde hair, blue eyes, and she was the only one with dark features. And she was like, oh, whatever, I'm gonna just have fun with it because I'm clearly not the type they're looking for. And she completely nailed the audition. And then lo and behold, she didn't get the role. And then the next day she went back into the same office to do another audition, which she didn't care for. And then she like demanded to see I don't remember who was the director, the producer of ER. And and so she said, I don't know where I got the audacity to do this, but she went and she was like, did anyone do better than me in the audition yesterday? And they said no. And she said, okay, why didn't I get the role? When she got home, she got the role. And that was like her breakout role. She had like 13 episodes on ER, and then after that, I think soon after that she got SVU. But I think that's absolutely an anomaly, you know? I think the majority of the time you don't have a say, but it goes to show that, you know, they were ready to cast someone else who wasn't as strong, but wanted to fit a certain mold or type or vision that they had.
Totally. It's often about the look, and I'm like,
Hmm.
that's not what audiences respond to most of the time. Like they're
Yeah.
like the look is the look until someone new comes in, and then that's the look. Like I just, yeah. Anyway, philosophically,
Yeah.
disagree with that for sure.
Yeah. It's so interesting. What do you think makes a good actor, in your opinion?
Um, I think a range of emotion and nuances, and like simply put, getting me to believe you, but Um, I'm a very gullible person, so that's also me. I'm just like, and I think if you can connect find something personal, even though it's probably someone else's words or not your experience, like find something personal about it. I feel
Hmm.
like if I can feel that, those are like the performances, and I'm like, whoa. Um, or like if something's really simple and it's maybe a two-word sentence or something like that, and there's still a lot of like it just feels heavy, like there's a lot of weight to it. It's a lot of like gut based. That's why it's so hard to debate. um
Yeah.
yeah. Tricky. At least like
I
for producers we can be like, I can do this thing, hire me.
mhm.
But yeah.
Yeah. Do you have any advice for actors who are just starting out? That's one. Two is trying to get representation, and then three, actors who have some experience but are trying to break into bigger roles, maybe roles that you might see in your as a shows like yours.
Yeah. For the bigger roles, I think if you have experience and you're like ready for that, you must already know a big community of people. Try to get close to creators, like showrunners, directors on the film side, because unfortunately writers don't have as much power on the film side. But get close to them. Like at the end of the day, like they make those hiring decisions. Like that story I just told you, like that wasn't me. Like of course still network with producers and all of that so you can get in the room and get that audition. But at the same time, like connecting with the showrunner and getting them to see you and the wide scope of you, like that really helps. And then you can invite them to shows, and like it's not just this one self-tape audition that they might be tired and hungry after lunch watching. Like it's a more um meaningful connection that you can capitalize off of. And then you said representation, right? I'm going backwards. So representation, it is so much better to, in my opinion, have no representation than to have a bad one.
Mm,
Um, because when someone is not doing good work for you or just letting you sit on their list, like you might as well just be working for yourself, and you're handing everything over to them and it's just sitting there and probably you have no idea. You're just like, I'm never getting called, I'm never getting auditions. Um, and so always like I would be picky, and if you feel like it's not the right fit, make a move fast. Or at least vocalize it to them of like, hey, why am I not getting this audition? Um, and then also talk to all of your friends like who have reps. I think you can compare like just from opportunities, like especially for actors, you should at least be knowing about auditions. If you fit that type, why can't you get in there? Like, what is wrong with like how you're being presented? I'm sure once, twice it happens, but like you're continuously missing opportunities. It's like, are they even pitching you? Are they paying attention to
mhm,
you? And then getting it from the start. Unfortunately, it's a lot of networking. People want to work with people that they like. So, going to places where you would meet agents, which is just like a lot of like mixers and industry things, like they're very incentivized to work with people. If you're a comedian, do a stand-up comedy. Like there are so many agents that go every single night, like literally to look for people. And stand up is also a really great place to show range, and like you can Hannah Gadsby it and be dramatic. You can do whatever you want. Like stand up is really just like here's a mic. And then for dramatic stuff, like don't discount theater either. A lot of theater agents will scout there as well. And they tend to sign more of those up and comers, and they can serve just as well as acting agents for the screen, even if you start out with a theater agent. So I think
Mhm.
people overlook that a lot. Um, and then you said just breaking in like fresh to the game, right?
Mhm.
Hang in there. It's a lot of rejection. But keep trying.
I
And
can second that 1000%.
I'm like, you probably know, and I've given this advice before. Just don't let the rejection get you. Like, if it does, sure, like take the afternoon, have some wine, like be sad, and then the next day you just got to get back up,
Mhm.
and realize that it's not personal, and find like track talent that you like still. Like I think a lot of people aren't intentional when they first start out, which wastes a lot of time. And it's, you're starting out, so you're like, why would I be picky? I'll just do whatever. But you don't even realize how much time you're wasting by trying to throw everything at the wall. So you should still be like paying attention to what you like and really being like, okay, if I want to work with this director one day who's a horror director, maybe I should try to look for horror opportunities and go on this show and like talk to
Mhm.
these horror creators or whatever. And just try to get closer to things that excite you, because you'll also realize that like if you are excited by it, you're probably good at it, and it's probably showing and the passion's coming through, and then
Mhm.
you'll have a way faster journey to the front of the line than if you were just like throwing out 100 nets and seeing what
Mhm.
catches.
Thank you so much. To finish off, I kind of just wanted to ask about your thoughts on the industry right now, because as most of us know, it's a little rough of a time, a lot of layoffs, some of our friends, and a lot of people are worried about a potential strike. And there's been some projects, and I've definitely been lucky with some of the work that I've been getting this year. I think, though, overall, it's been kind of a slow year. I don't know about you
Yes.
on your end, but
Oh yeah. If it's not bad for someone this year, then they're not paying attention or they don't know what's going on. Like it's rough out there this year. I don't think it's ever been harder to get something made. But at the same time, things are still happening. Like
hmm
I think indie film is kind of having a moment right now. I'm not necessarily saying they're all getting sold, but they're definitely getting made. And it's a really good time for like voice-driven things. Um, COVID, two strikes, like
hmm
the two strikes really, really did a doozy. But they were necessary. Like people were not getting paid. And I think it's just a necessary market reset that we have to do. As well as like there's been such an oversaturation of content that now that they have to pay more for it, they're going to buy less and be more intentional. And it is going to pay off for us, even though it feels like there's less jobs right now. I think
hmm
everyone will find their place. And instead of there being 5 billion shows on the air that, and then 4 billion of them get canceled, it's going to be like, here are the 1 million shows you have to watch. And there'll hopefully be more of like a cultural conversation where we're all watching together. And um but what I'm noticing is like even though a lot of writers and creators have gone and actors have gone without work this year, I thought they would all be prioritizing a paycheck, which they are in a lot of cases. But I thought they would be prioritizing the paycheck overall, um over creative fulfillment, and that's not really happening. I think everyone's been it is happening, but everyone's been so jaded and discouraged by the greed with everything that played out with the strikes. um it was just like kind of a reminder to how toxic things have gotten and like how hard it's been, and like this obsession with like IP and just like we have to make a movie about like a hair straightener. Like it's like creatively unfulfilling things are being pushed on us because of greed all the time. And it's so hard to get something made that do you really want to pick the thing that's not making your heart sing and go through the
Hmm.
slog and fight for that? Or do you want to make the thing that you really care about? And maybe it'll pay off, maybe it won't, but you already went 6 months without it paying off. So like what's the point? So
Hmm.
what I'm noticing is like a lot of people are like, no, I'm actually not doing that thing anymore that feels easy and that the studio wants me to do. I'm going to do this thing that I've been wanting to make for 20 years, or I'm going to help this younger writer develop this book because I love this book and I've decided
Hmm.
after the strike that I want to give back. So it's like a different psychology that feels good, but it's also scary. Like a lot of buyers are operating out of fear. Um, it feels like everyone's just worried about losing their job. So everyone is buying very intentionally, but it's like I compare it to a politician who's running for re-election rather than actually making change. And that's what kind of scares me. Because are we sure that that project will get made this year if you buy it? You know, are you just buying it
Hmm.
for a mandate that's based off of an algorithm that isn't genuine or authentic or like will break through? So it's a mess, but I would just say like stay true to yourself and take this year and reflect on what you actually want to do. If you have a job, don't move. Cling on for dear life. Like unless there's a really great opportunity, I would just stay. Or unless you're like getting, abused or exploited, like I would just try to hang on and reflect and think about what you want to do in this industry. And next year will be when we can actually make real moves, I think. But right now, it's just like, I don't trust anyone because I don't think they know what they want. I don't think anyone knows how to fix it or it would have been fixed. So I think
Right.
it's necessary reset, but we'll survive. Just, remember why we're
Keep
here.
on hanging on. Yeah. Well, thank you so much for your time. This was
Thank you
so
for the great
lovely. And yeah, I really enjoyed hearing about your story. And especially, I think it made me emotional to know that there are communities like Macro that are really inclusive and pushing for the right stories to be heard. I think that's such a fresh perspective that I certainly don't hear every day. So thank you.
Of course. Yeah. We want the content that white people have always had. Like put us in Big Little Lies, like put us in
Yeah.
something. So
Yeah. And definitely like the shows that actually have diversity, I think are doing better, right? I don't think anyone wants to see just like, I mean, I was gonna say like Friends again, but I mean, Friends was great. Friends was great. And we don't need another Friends, right?
exactly. That's what I say all the time. I'm like, white people are bored of this too. Like if you
Yeah.
just take the same, like if you take a vampire show and you just change the perspective and now they're a black vampire, like
Yeah.
that's so interesting to me. Like
Yeah.
just from that perspective change, it could be just like a whole new thing.
Yeah.
So um yeah.
It's an exciting time, I think. I mean, it's difficult and exciting for POC people in the industry, I think.
Yeah,
At least
definitely.
that's the perspective I'd like to have.
Yeah, it does feel like, unfortunately, sometimes like diversity is treated like a trend that's like
Hmm.
fading because we're like, it really spiked when George Floyd's death happened and we got a
Mm,
lot of incoming calls and all of that. And now it definitely feels different. Like there are people that actually want and value diversity, and there are people that are just doing it to follow a trend. So
right.
in that sense, like that's the reality. But I think the people that want to do are really passionate about it and getting smarter every day. So
Hmm.
it is exciting. Of
Yeah. Well, thank you so much
course, thank you.
for your time. Well, have a good rest of your evening.
You too. I'm sure I'll see you soon.
Yes, thank you so much.
Thanks. Bye.
Bye.